thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm really proud and honored to bring back to the stage the wonderful director of the film you just saw, Andrew Haigh. On the chair now. We also have another special guest with us tonight, Jonathan Alberts, who's the editor of the film. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. I'm a little mad at you for ending the film with this Frankie Goes to Hollywood song and making me cry just before the Q&A.
I'm sorry.
I've never cried during Frankie Goes to Hollywood before. So. And it's not the first time I've seen the film, so I knew. But I wanted maybe to start with a sort of easy question about the material for the film. It's based on a novel from 1987, I believe, but was later made into a film by the author. And how did that come about for you? You read the book first, or was it sent to you? And
yeah, the book was sent to me by Blueprint, the producers of the film, and I read the book, and I knew I hadn't heard of the book. It was the first time I'd read it, and
You don't read books usually.
I can't read. I had to get someone to read it to me. I found the book really interesting. I sort of put it aside for a while and just tried to think about how it made me feel. And when I'm approaching an adaptation, I want to see how it works within me type thing. But then there was this kind of central idea. I mean, this film is quite different from the book, I will say, but the central idea is still there about this person meeting his parents again and finding a way to deal with his past, I suppose. And I just found that such a fascinating way to start exploring the nature of family and regret and guilt and pain and familial love. And then I kind of took the story from there and found a way to make it feel more personal to me, I suppose.
Did you see the film adaptation? Or?
It's really hard to get, and then I saw it actually just before I went into pre-production, which was interesting. And again, you know, in the original story, the character that Paul Mescal plays is a woman in the story, and she turns into an evil spirit and tries to kill the main character. So, and that's the same in the book as well. It has a different type of thing going on, which works. Like as a traditional ghost story, it really does fit in with that traditional Japanese kind of ghost story style, which I really like. But I knew that that wasn't the film that I wanted to make. That wasn't what was interesting to me about it, and I wanted to find a more grounded, at least to start with, reality of the story, and then take it to somewhere different.
I mean, when I thought about the theme of the book, I could totally see what attracted you to this, but you're usually more based in realism and a little more like down to earth. So all the ghost story elements and the fantasy that you bring and the semi-dystopian science fiction feel felt very new and a great approach for you to explore all these themes about fear, desire, and trauma, and really about love in every different way, which is love for a partner and from your family and what you get, and that makes you who you are. So I felt it was something very interesting for you to tackle and to go beyond.
And usually my films have had a very limited time scale and been quite linear in their time. And I think even when we were editing, I love the way that time seems to evaporate in this story, and it doesn't sort of make any sense or have much meaning anymore. And I think we both really liked that idea when we were working through the film in the edit. But, you know, just like memory, you can be transported back to the past by a song or by a smell or the sound of the wind or whatever it might be. And so I kind of liked that this was really playing with that idea of time.
So you and Jonathan have worked together for quite a while. And
we have.
This will be the last time that we were together.
It's done.
I was wondering how much freedom does Andrew give you when you're working, and at what part do you, oh gosh, this is why it's the last time?
So glad you asked that.
We're opening it up.
Well, actually, what's great about Andrew, and I think, we've been working together now just over 10 years, and what's great is that he has a very strong vision of what he wants the film to be, but he's very expansive and very open with all of his collaborators in terms of building the film and making the film. So, I'll stay up quite late cutting like a mini montage for a certain section, and Andrew will come in the next morning and see, and it's like, great, we won't be using that, but but he allows me to do it. But the truth is, he's super good about, he has this kind of really interesting knack about really knowing what he wants and being so thorough and so rigorous, but also just allowing people to like do what they want. I've seen it with the actors, I've seen it with all the other heads of departments, so it's kind of a very unique skill, and having worked with a lot of directors, not all directors work like that at all.
And what was quite funny was Jonathan said to me before I was going to make this film, he said, I think you should make something, just a bit more emotional. And I was like, okay.
It's true, I did say that.
You did say that. And I was like, well, I said, no, I don't really want to. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do it now just to prove you that I can do it.
Well, you kept saying, because usually when we're working on a film, Andrew's busy typing in the background. It's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm working on this thing. It's like, oh, right. And he kept saying, when we were working on a TV show called The Northwater, Andrew was like in the background typing away, and I was like, what are you doing? He's like, working on something really personal. It's really personal. It's like, okay, it's really personal. All right. And so as it got closer, then we finally, I think 2 months later, I read the script and I was like, oh, it's like personal for all sorts of reasons, which you should probably share. Just a few. It's like I felt like the film was like a new and expensive type of therapy.
It was. It was the most expensive therapy I've ever done, definitely. And it did feel like therapy in many ways. And, the story's clearly not autobiographical, but it definitely does come from a personal place. And it was always for me, like, I wanted to tell an experience as I see it, from a queer experience, certainly, but not just my experience. I know that it's the same as Jonathan's experience and lots of, people of our age, in our 40s and 50s. But just like Adam in the story digs into the past, I wanted to do the same thing with my own life, I think. So, that house that he's in is my old childhood home in reality. And so I hadn't been back there for 42 years or something, and went back to that place, and we got permission to film there. And so I tried to dig into my own past. I
can't believe they let you back in.
I mean, they shouldn't have done, to be honest.
But then also dressed it as though it was your childhood home.
I dressed it like my old house, and a lot of the elements, in the story are personal to me, and some of the stories they get told and all kinds of things, and some of the relationships and things. But even then, I knew that while I wanted it to be personal, I knew that I didn't want it just to be about me, So obviously, nobody wants to see that. So it was always about, trying to tell a wider story about what it means to be a parent, what it means to be a child, what it means to be a lover, all of those things, and how we try and, negotiate those complicated relationships that kind of come and go through our lives.
Well, I'm glad you were able to do this on film. It's an expensive therapy. Thank you for Searchlight for financing his medical expenses. It's interesting that you mentioned the childhood house, because the film has a structure that goes from the past and this specific house, but you also go into a present or future that's extremely weird-looking, contemporary, modern, futuristic London, with the high-rises and the sort of desertic area. So can you talk about building this sort of set and atmosphere that really changed the tone for the character and the viewer as well?
Yeah, we thought really long and hard about, it's obviously quite an unusual film, I guess, in terms of what's happening. And I was always very scared that the central conceit wouldn't work, and there's a lot of turns in the story that I was worried about would not work. So I wanted it, even in the present day of the story, I guess you could call it, that it felt slightly shifted from reality, even though that is based on an apartment block in London and on the outskirts of London. It does look like that, and the outside of the window is what it looks like through that window. It was really important to me that the tone just felt like I'm not quite sure when and where this is set. There's nobody's on the phone, there's no mobile cell phones. So it was from the very beginning trying to create a tone that made you feel like you were separate from time somehow. And that would allow you to sort of understand the kind of conceit of the story and make it feel real when you suddenly go back and the parents are there and all that kind of thing.
Can you talk about the structure of the film, which is also related to the physical and the geographical place, but how it shifts with time, and how Jonathan was involved in making this shift to the structure? Were you shooting chronologically, or did you write and shoot in different parts, and how did that come through the editing as well?
Yeah, I mean, we shot relatively chronologically, I think. Due to actor availability, you never can. I love shooting chronologically, but it never really works. But we spent, I think, a lot of the time in the edit was just about making the tonal jumps work and making those transitions work. And especially in the midsection of the film, when he goes to the club and sort of time essentially breaks down, there's no sense of us knowing kind of what time scale are we even on now. And I know Jonathan worked really hard, even in the assembly, like working through that kind of structure.
And I think ultimately the structure of the film, Andrew's very thorough also with the writing in terms of that. And we experimented really early with a slightly different structure in the beginning, but we actually went back to the original structure. And we've done that before, I think, with things, I think the editing is so much about exploring the possibilities, and part of what Andrew said when we sat down was, let's just make sure that we explore everything. And we were cutting this for about a year, so it wasn't a short time, but it was a time that we actually just got to spend plenty of time just taking all the variables of performance and cinematography, all of the sound design, music, and just really throw everything at it. And it was great. And our producer, one of our producers, who's very lovely and very British and very lovely, he basically come in and say, "It's beautiful, keep going." So we kept going, but what was interesting is that I think we kind of found bits and pieces along the way, and they just slowly kind of appeared as we were digging away and excavating.
And it's always about what you lose, essentially, in a film. I don't think there's nothing dramatically is not in the film that was shot, but there's always just small things that you realise you don't need, that you thought you felt you needed, and then you don't. And, I didn't want the movie to be 2.5 hours long, and, there's lots of choices you make along the way.
That's why you needed Jonathan.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a constant conversation, because obviously when you're in the edit too, 7 months in, 8 months in, even 4 months in, Andrew and I sit there sometimes where it's like, okay, listen to the dialogue, let's understand the meaning of the film, because all of that stuff starts to evaporate as you've seen it more and more, and you start to, not fully understand exactly what's happening. So it's always getting back to that place. So it's a difficult one, but all editors and all directors end up in that place in the edit at some point.
Well, you're also an editor, so I'm sure you're...
Don't say that in front of Jonathan.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Not an official one. You've done editing. So.
I'm like, why don't you just go for a coffee break, Jonathan?
We like to talk about Andrew's early experiences in editing. In the cutting room.
There's a circle of editors who talks about him.
Well, it's just the circle of two.
Let's not go there.
No.
I wanted to continue on the film in terms of you mentioned that the first actor that was attached to the film was Andrew Scott, and it seemed a really perfect double for the character you wanted to create, and in terms of maybe not a double in terms of your own life, but someone that could really inspire you. So I wanted to ask a little bit about approaching him, working with him, and then building the rest of the cast around him to find chemistry. I do think the chemistry with Paul Mescal is quite perfect. I mean, Paul Mescal does work with work with everyone, to be honest.
He's good at chemistry.
He's good at chemistry, yes.
I think it's easy for everyone to have chemistry with Paul Mescal.
And and the parents as well.
It was a, it's always a really nerve-wracking process when you're trying to cast. I wanted to get the right person. Obviously, you want to get the right person. I liked Andrew for a long time, and we just had a conversation. And he understood the character. Andrew's 45. He's gay. He understands. It doesn't take long, I think, when you're a gay person to start talking about your experiences. And there's a lot of very shared experiences, especially from a certain age of people. And so we just talked a lot in our first meeting, and I just kind of knew he was right for the role. I respect him as an actor so much, but he also really understood the role. And he knew it wasn't going to be an easy role. It's a very vulnerable performance. He's got to tear himself open, and it was hard, and I knew it was hard for him, and it was about just us all feeling safe enough to go to those places. And then I cast the parents, so I cast Claire next, and then I cast Jamie. Yeah, they're both. I love them both so much in it, but it was a hard thing. They had to feel like they could be his parents, which they do kind of make sense as his parents. I also felt like I was casting my own parents somehow at the same time. And then Paul came on last of all. And immediately when I put them in a room together, I could tell that there was chemistry. And I think for actors, they all really wanted to work with each other. I
thought you were going to say they really wanted to work with you.
No, not
and
that.
Jonathan.
Yeah, they really did. But they so wanted to work with each other. And you can, when actors want to do that, you can tell how excited they are. And they all, I think actors have to fall in love with each other when they're making films. Or TV shows, and they really did. And so I was never worried about the chemistry. I felt like it was there. It was there from the start. And then it's just trying to harness it and film it and capture that chemistry once it's there.
Do you want to add anything, Jonathan?
No. Well, I will say it's with the way Andrew works with actors, and when I get the footage, it's always pretty incredible, and it's always a conversation that we have too, that there's a certain kind of naturalism that the actors have with the way Andrew works with them, and I think it goes back to his openness and his thoroughness and the way he chooses to have that experience. Because sometimes it feels like, I never thought that she could inhabit this in this way, and so it's something we talk about in the cutting room, and it's something that I think it's about Andrew's ability as a director.
It's a really beautiful film, and I think it's a film that works the first time you watch it, and then it works again and again, and then you see different details every single time you watch it. And the last time was the parents, where it's really, really moving. So I want to thank you so much for being here with us tonight. I want to thank Searchlight for showing the film to the audience tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
So much.
Cheers. Thank you.